A woman was arrested in Bakersfield, California for replacing an American flag with a Mexican flag at a local park and proceeding to claim that the land was Mexican and that it was her people's land. But before addressing any of the nonsense she says in the video, let's watch the video to give you an idea of what happened.
You're not gonna tell me what to do. This is Mexican land.
Oh, okay.
Look at that flag, because that flag isn't on the floor, is it?
Hey.
Is it?
Hey.
You can't say I'm disrespecting. No, esta es mi tierra. Esta es mi tierra. Esta es mi tierra.
Come here.
Okay, my people kill you.
Turn around.
I'm going in peace and you're hurting me and you're gonna regret it when you... Okay.
Hey.
Touch me, my... when your kids die. When your kids die. You're squishing my hand and they already know. You don't need to take me.
Stop her.
Take me. Take me. Take me.
Take her down.
Take me, my...
Get on the ground. She's all right. We'll get her.
All this happening this morning around 9:30. The Kern County Sheriff's Office says 24-year-old Crystal Aguilar cut the chain securing the flagpole at the entrance to the park, removed the American flag, threw it into the mud, and replaced it with the flag of Mexico. When park rangers attempted to detain Aguilar, she responded with a slew of threats. She was taken into custody and booked into jail on several charges, including threatening a peace officer, vandalism, and resisting arrest.
First of all, she just seems like a wonderful lady. She seems like a joy to be around. Also, absolutely shocked, no offense, at the fact that this lady's 24. I don't know what it is. It's not working for her. You know what I mean? Her diet, her skincare. I don't know what she's doing, but it ain't working for you, honey. I think some of the comments even mentioned it. They were like, she doesn't look a day over 40, which is insane. But yeah, not looking too great. But anyway, just from what she said in the video, in the short clip, there's a lot to unpack. But first, I just wanted to give you an idea of where exactly Bakersfield is. It's about 5 hours north of the Mexican border. It's a couple hours north of Los Angeles. I didn't know where Bakersfield was before this video, so that's why I thought I'd mention it. So you can hear the lady making some claims in the video. One day you hear her make in Spanish is "Esta es mi tierra," which is in Spanish, this is my land. And so this is her point of contention, I guess, that this is her people's land, which I presume Mexican people's land. And the question is, why does she feel that she has, or Mexico has, or somebody has a claim to this land? And this question is kind of contentious, and it's kind of hard to presume what she's exactly saying, because at least the Mexican state itself doesn't have an issue with the borders of the United States and Mexico. They're not making a claim to ownership of California. So presumably, if I were to get into this crazy person's head, or if I were to ask her and interact with her, she would probably say something like, this is has historically been Mexican people's land. Mexican people have lived here in the past, or a majority of Mexican people lived here at some point, so therefore it's Mexican people's land, or something like that. I'm sure she'd say something in that vein. Now, the first thing I think whenever I hear people say stuff like this is that they don't know their history, never opened a history book in their life, because all throughout history, borders and territorial ownership has been contentious and problematic. All throughout history, either land was conquered or it was purchased from other nations, and actually for the vast majority of it was just conquered. It's rare nowadays in modern times, but even today you can see cases of this, like with Russia and China, countries that are disputing borders or disputing land ownership. Unfortunately, the world isn't like some kumbaya, like everybody gets along with each other. Every nation peacefully determines its borders with every other nation. This isn't, some fantasy land, unfortunately, for this. Like, this is the real world, honey. Like, borders are gonna be in dispute. People are going to settle it with fighting. Territorial claims are going to be messy. And in the case of the annexation of California, this was no exception. As a result of the Mexican-American War in 1848, Mexico ceded most of the land that the U.S. now owns west of Texas to the United States. And as many wars do, this one started as a territorial dispute, and the borders were decided by the victor. It's a cruel world. Unfortunately, that's just the way the world works. And if you have an issue with it, I don't know, take it up with whoever made the rules. It's just the way it is. So anyway, as we already knew, there is no historical basis for Mexico to claim ownership of California, nor are they doing that. But what about the people of Mexico, as she says, her people? Maybe historically the land was populated by Mexicans, and that's what she's referring to? Well, luckily I did some research. It only took a 5-second Google search, fortunately for me. And in March of 1848, this is 1 month after California was ceded to the United States by Mexico, the population of California was only 157,000 people. Of those people, only 6,500 were of Spanish or Mexican descent. So now this gets into another issue, because not all the people in California were of Mexican descent, obviously, as I just stated. What exactly does she mean by her people? Who exactly is included in this? Is she including Spaniards that lived in California at the time? Is she including Native Americans that lived in California at the time? Is she including American settlers who decided to move to California and became part of the local Californian population that we now know as Californios? Is she including those people in the term her people? See, this is why you can't divide land based on history. It's just too messy. Imagine if a person from North Macedonia went to Turkey or something, and they put up a flag of North Macedonia and they said, this is my people's land, because on the basis that Alexander the Great conquered it like 2 millennia ago. Like, everybody would look at this person like he's insane, which he is, as you should see him. Or if an Italian person went to Greece and they put up an Italian flag and they said, this is my people's land, on the basis that it was the land of the Roman Empire, also 2 millennia ago, you would see them as insane people and you wouldn't take them seriously. As we shouldn't take this lady seriously. It's just nonsense what she's saying. Maybe it's seen differently because this is a more recent territorial acquisition, but in that case, I'd say there's less reason to protest. Mexico literally just gave this land up in comparison to the Roman Empire or the Macedonian Empire. This literally just happened like 200 years ago or something. You can't cede land and then complain about it being ceded to another country you didn't like or something. So anyways, back to the results of the Mexican-American War. What happened to Mexicans living in California after the war? Well, as it turns out, the majority just ended up staying in the US and becoming US citizens. Which brings me back to the issue of her saying my people. Surely there are many descendants of these Californios, which is the term used for the original population of Californian settlers, Californios. Surely there's a good number of people that live in California that are descendants of Californios. And yet they have no ties to the country of Mexico, except maybe, and if that, through some great-great-great-grandfather or something, because they're like a 6th or 7th generation American. So would these be considered her people? Surely they have more claim to the territory through their ancestors, right? Because their ancestors are literally Californios. Or at least they have more of a claim than this lady, because she just got here yesterday. She has no ancestral ties to the land. She speaks pretty good Spanish. I'm assuming she's a first-gen American. I don't presume that her ancestors were Californios. I mean, she just got here. I'm assuming her parents immigrated here. So if anything, these descendants of Californios have more right to the land than she does. If anything, she's the outsider here. She's saying that you need to give us back our land. Meanwhile, the descendants of the Californios are already living there because they just never left. They just ended up becoming American. Meanwhile, she's including herself with them, like as if she's representative of all of Mexico and of the people that had the land in the first place. So by her logic, which is flawed anyway, but by her logic, the people who have a right to the land already live there. Absolute nonsense all around. Unfortunately, in order to understand these people, you kind of have to get in the mud with them to try and, figure out their logic, if it's even existent, but, in this case, it wasn't, unfortunately. I want to end by noting an interesting outcome of the Mexican-American War and by making a proposition to this young lady. Now, as I already mentioned, most of the Californians just ended up becoming US citizens after the Mexican-American War. But what about those that didn't want to be Americans? Now, inevitably, there was a portion of the Californian population that still identified with Mexico, that liked Mexico, that didn't want to be a part of the United States, that wanted to be actively Mexican. And after the war, they realized that this was no longer going to be Mexico. So you know what they did? They moved to Mexico. Self-deportation. My suggestion is, if you identify so much with Mexico, and if you like Mexico so much, similarly to these people, you can just give up your US citizenship, go to Mexico, pledge allegiance to them, and just be a Mexican citizen. And this goes out to anybody that empathizes with this woman in some way. You can just do as these people did, right? They identified with Mexico, they felt Mexican, they rejected US citizenship, and they went to live in Mexico. And they became, and presumably their descendants are living there now. So to this young lady, that's my proposition to you, is the announce your U.S. citizenship, go live in Mexico if you identify with it so much. I'm sure they'd be elated to have somebody as brilliant, as well-spoken, as docile as you on their side of the border. Just a suggestion. Yeah, hope that goes well.